Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you tonight and be with you. It's my pleasure to be here and to be able to share some things with you, some information that I think will be helpful. The topic for tonight is compassion fatigue, which is very similar to burnout. Well, what is that? If you haven't heard the term compassion fatigue before now, it's a type of burnout, but it's the type that hits those in the caregiving professions most often. Compassion fatigue. The name gives it away. It really is for any kind of profession that is a caregiving profession. Even things like humanitarian aid, going to disaster zones, disaster response teams, and that sort of thing. Both compassion fatigue and burnout is a result of cumulative high stress and exhaustion. It's the emotional drain from being empathetic and continually giving of ourselves to others. Compassion fatigue happens when we're under prolonged, chronic, continuous, high, intense stress for long periods of time. Compassion fatigue and burnout both have characteristics and symptoms that are very similar to those of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And I think both those terms, compassion fatigue and burnout, are more accurately characterized as adrenal fatigue. When we are in a stressful situation, our bodies produce an extra amount of adrenaline and other stress hormones like cortisol. And when we're under stress for long periods of time, our bodies are producing high quantities of this adrenaline and cortisol and the other hormones. And then over a period of time, it may just be from the accumulation of the stress over time, or it may be something that happens, an event that causes you to just shut down. And it can be almost in an instant that you just shut down. And in adrenal fatigue, the body no longer produces the adrenaline that it needs and the other hormones. And so it's almost very much like being addicted to something, the adrenaline rush. And if you don't have the right amount of hormones for your body to function at the level that it's been functioning, then everything sort of shuts down. Let's go to our next bit of information. This is a diagram to sort of conceptualize what this idea of compassion fatigue is all about. In the circle, we see that we have compassion fatigue, which results in a loss of self. Here, vicarious trauma is what happens, or what it's called, when we are listening closely, attentively, caring for our clients, compassionate about what they're going through. And they're telling us their stories. And we're listening with an open heart and with compassion. And we begin to feel the pain, and the suffering, and the loss that they have. And so we experience their trauma vicariously. And in situations like that, when this happens continually and it leads to compassion fatigue, we will actually experience change in our cognitive schemas and our perspective on life. Well, that is vicarious trauma, experiencing it through the the telling of the story. There's also something very similar. It's called secondary traumatic stress. And again, the symptoms of all of these are very similar to those of PTSD. Really, it's emotional and physical exhaustion and adrenal fatigue. We empathize with the people that we care about and that we're counseling. And we enter into their world with them, to walk with them, to give them encouragement, to give them hope, to give them what we can. Compassion, care, help, whatever resources we have or have available. Help them find new perspectives and direction. Perhaps set some new goals for their life. We lend them our strength, our hope, and our courage so that it gives them the things that they need so that they can cope with their life situation and find perspective, perhaps change their thinking in some way, consider their options, and begin to be able to move forward again from the stuck place that they found themselves. Did anybody look at the clock? Okay. Who is at risk? Well, there goes one paper. Who is at risk for chronic compassion fatigue and burnout? As I mentioned, it's caregivers in general, all types. Those in the counseling professions are some of the most susceptible to these conditions. Those in the nursing and medical professions and other healthcare professions. Family members who give long-term care to their loved one, and it's just a long period of high stress. They also can suffer and experience these conditions of burnout and compassion fatigue. Those who are caring for the elderly and disabled, such as in a group home or a nursing home, where they have to be constantly on alert. They have to be very diligent and comprehensive in the care that they give to the patients. And of course, those that are working in palliative care and dealing with the diseased person as well as their family of those who are dying, that's a particularly traumatic caring profession that's susceptible to this. Ministers are also susceptible to this, always giving out, and very often not having a place to resupply themselves, to re-energize themselves. As I mentioned earlier, humanitarian aiders, rescue professions, those in the military, they know on a daily basis that they are in extreme danger if they're on the front lines. They could kill or be killed at any moment. So they have to be hyper vigilant. But they're willing to do that for their values, for their country, for their people. But very often, men and women who've gone to the battlefield and experienced the tragedy of war come home with symptoms that are virtually the same as compassion fatigue. It's just called post-traumatic stress disorder. And of course, the same thing is true for those who experience disasters and tragedies, earthquakes, floods, famine, typhoons, you name, there's such a long list of natural disasters that could strike an area at any moment, and one day you're fine and the next day you're experiencing intense tragedy. And it's very difficult in that time to be able to garner the resources that you need to survive that situation, to be able to cope and maybe be able to help someone else. But those who are in it and it remains for a long period of time, like if, for example, the earthquake in Japan, it's going to take a while. The earthquakes down in Haiti, it's going to take a while. They can experience these conditions as well. Okay, here's another diagram that gives you some visual idea of how this works. And this is Watson's theory of caregiving. And it's overlaid on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, so in this hierarchy we have safety, when we feel safe, and when we feel a sense of belonging, and we have good self-esteem, and we've reached a place in our lives of self-actualization, then we're in a good position to be able to bring compassionate care to others, to those in need. That's Watson's theory of caring. Well, if you visualize this pyramid just split down the middle, you can see that there are some things that promote that and compassionate caring and giving, but also in satisfaction in that. Well, here it says compassionate satisfaction, job satisfaction. When we receive recognition and appreciation, support, and the interaction of coworkers, when we're not having to do it alone, and evidence that what we're doing is actually helping, is actually successful. All of this promotes the well-being in the task, in the job of caregiving. But on the other hand, there are things that will detract from that and turn it from being compassion satisfaction into being compassion fatigue. These things are stress, inadequate time and resources, pressure to perform, heavy loads, the cumulative stress and exhaustion, and it all leads to burnout and fatigue. Okay, that's got that tripod taken care of. And before we move on, well, I do have a diagram or a card, poster board of the signs and symptoms. Now you can see there's a lot of them. And on the paper that was uploaded to Learning House, it's probably not as jumbled up as this is, but the signs and symptoms, and I wasn't able to even get it all on here, are exhaustion, feeling overwhelmed, reduced efficiency and efficacy, reduced output, loss of satisfaction in our work, being late, taking more days off, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, disordered thinking, boredom, loss of interest in things, low morale, distress, disillusionment, dissatisfaction, depression, anxiety, frustration, hopelessness, no sense of purpose and direction. Our nurturing ability is also diminished. We feel demoralized and detached and almost apathetic. We begin to depersonalize and sort of act out with sarcasm and cynicism and negativity. And we'll begin to feel emotionally numb, irritable, hypercritical, withdrawn, really wanting to isolate ourselves and get away from all the things that is causing this stress. And we can even reach the point where we're beginning to question our spiritual beliefs, our values, and questioning God, sometimes even to the point of being angry or resentful or bitter at God. In addition to those physical symptoms or the signs and symptoms, some of the physical symptoms of compassion fatigue are rapid pulse, sleep disturbance, fatigue, weakness, dizziness, reduced resistance to infection, memory problems, disordered thinking, changes in weight, either up or down, gastrointestinal complaints, irritability, hypertension, chest pains, headaches, muscle aches, backaches, body aches in general, a tenseness and a tension in your body, a hyperarousal, like the fight or flight syndrome of hyperproduction of adrenaline, where you're at a moment, in a moment's notice, you can fight or flee. That hyperarousal state. We have to be hypervigilant, or we feel that, the need to be hypervigilant. And we can even experience flashbacks and have intrusive thoughts and memories and nightmares from what our clients have shared with us. Okay, here is another diagram that sort of gives you a picture of this. These are empirical indicators. So there have been research studies that have validated the information that is here. And it all begins with the risk factors, predominantly stress, but also giving of ourselves to others and the contact that we have with others. And this stress, it has to be prolonged, continuous, and intense. And then that causes a series of things to happen. This compassion discomfort, the first stage, we need rest there, but we can still come out of it fairly easily. But we feel weary. We have less enthusiasm. We're desensitized. We have diminished ability, an inability to aid, a decrease in our perception, and a weakening of our attention. Okay, as these begin to escalate, we reach the middle stage of compassion stress. Here, there's a loss of strength, reduced output, diminished performance, a loss of endurance, physical complaints, irritability, emotionally overwhelmed, inability to share in people's suffering, a lack of spiritual awareness, boredom, impaired concentration. Again, moving from the first level to the second level, and if it continues to escalate and it reaches full-blown compassion fatigue, burnout, exhaustion, you have no energy, you're accident prone, you're on the verge of a breakdown, you begin to feel apathetic, you want to quit, you're just unresponsive to anything really in life. You get a toughness, a callousness, an indifference. It affects your judgment, your thinking. You become disinterested, and you sure don't want to think about things. You sure don't want to introspect. All the empirical indicators of what happens to us as the stress continues and escalates. This is a process, and it's progressive and cumulative. Okay, why is this important? Well, it's important for many reasons, one of which, as the old saying goes, I've been there, I've done that. And it almost destroyed me. It's very, very difficult when you reach a place of burnout and adrenal fatigue, compassion fatigue, to even have a desire to go on, to even have a desire to live, for that matter. The depression overtakes you. In my case, I gained over 100 pounds in a year, and my weight continued to increase even beyond that year, till I am more than double my normal size. Not only was the weight a factor, but memory problems, aches and pains, everything that has been described in these posters, I experienced because I didn't have the balance that I needed in my life. I worked all the time. I was intent on being as good as I possibly could, a little bit of a perfectionist, trying to do it all, and the more I did, the more I was given to do. That's the way the government operates. The more you do, the more they give you to do. I was always chief of my divisions because I always did an excellent job and everything got done and done well. But I worked 12 or 14 hours a day, 6 days a week to do it. And I sat down one day and I thought, what's it all for? What does it mean? It has no meaning, it has no purpose, it has no lasting, eternal meaning. I'm wasting my life. I'm working for a payday and then I don't have time to enjoy it. There's got to be more to life than this. But by that point, I was so burnt out and so in that place that I had no sense of purpose, no sense of direction. I'd lost all hope, lost faith. This is what can happen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not careful, if you're not aware of it. I'm asking you, hoping that you will be aware of it so that you will protect yourself. The reasons this is important, besides what I'm sharing, and you will find the references to this in the paperwork, is that if these conditions of burnout and compassion fatigue are not recognized early and effaced, helped, reversed, then you can reach a point in full-blown compassion fatigue that it's irreversible. You can no longer return to that place that you were. You can recover some of your abilities, but you can't regain it all. And there's too much to lose to let this to be a casual matter that you don't take seriously. There's a Native American saying that each time that you give of yourself to heal someone else, you're giving a piece of yourself away until at some point we will need healing ourselves. And that's why it's so important to have a support system, to have friends and family who understand and are supportive, to have colleagues and co-workers who are there with you, to get the help that you need if the workload is too much, or to realize that you can only do so much and you're not going to kill yourself to do everything, because then you'll be no good to anyone, not your clients and not your family and your friends. So don't give so much of yourself away that you have nothing left. We have to be empathic in our compassion and in our caring for others. But that is the very thing that can lead to this compassion fatigue and burnout. And as I mentioned before on one of the other graphs, this can also lead to actual changes in our thinking, in our ability, the way we put thoughts together, our cognitive schema, particularly as these relate to dependency, trust, safety, power, control, independence, esteem, intimacy, and frame of reference. The empirical studies show that the helping professions, and particularly the mental health professions, are the most highly susceptible of all. And those who work in the public sector are more highly susceptible than those in the private sector. And females are at a significantly higher risk of getting this than males. Okay, what can we do about it? Well, we can have a prevention plan. We have to realize our vulnerability, and it's a part of our life, and we have to accept responsibility for our own health and well-being. We have to recognize the symptoms and be on the lookout for them. We have to be aware of the things that is affecting our ability to function effectively, both personally and professionally. And I created a self-care plan to give you some ideas. It consists of 10 things. You'll find it in the handout, but just to give you a short rundown. Make a list of your priorities and then determine which things are really priorities and which are not. And the things that are not top priority, let them slide down. You're going to have to let some things go, or you're going to have to get some help, because it's virtually impossible to do everything and have it all be a top priority. Make a schedule and include in your schedule time for rest, relaxation, refreshment, enjoyment. Have a life outside of work. That was one of my big mistakes. I didn't. Don't be like I was. Exercise, stay physically fit, drink plenty of water. Pamper yourself occasionally. Love yourself. Do things that will make you feel good. Make sure your nutritional needs are met. Stay connected to God and His Word and prayer and Christian fellowship. Those are so important. Seek professional help when you feel that it's necessary, either through supervision or referrals or camaraderie among your colleagues, or catharsis, talking to somebody about it, or any other available resources. Be willing to reach out to your family and friends also. Learn and develop your own coping strategies, and engage in problem solving and solution finding behaviors. And then finally, be on the lookout for the symptoms and watch for them in your colleagues as well. Okay, we have one final graph, and this is just give you a visual picture of the circle of things. Well, if we'll develop personal strategy and keep in mind that balance is the key and spirituality is the other key, it takes two keys to make this work, we're well on our way to staying healthy. Learn to rest and relax, nutrition, exercise, fun. Give yourself some personal rewards. Some of these things that I just read off to you. The support system, family, friends, social networks, so forth. Supervision, colleagues, referrals. Keep your skill level high so you feel competent. And continue your education so you remain competent. Then prioritize, delegate, use good time management, set boundaries and keep them, and if necessary, seek professional help yourself. And in doing all of this circle of strategies, we come to a circle that is the healing of the heart, spirit, and soul of caregivers. We need to be self-aware of everything that we're feeling and experiencing and what's going on. We need to forgive ourselves if we can't do it all. Realize that we can't heal anyone, that we can't solve anyone's problems, and that we cannot do it all. But we can do what we can, but forgive ourselves for what we can't do. And hope and pray that God provides the resources to meet any other needs. Your spirituality and your hope will keep you grounded and healthy, your boundaries, and then you will have compassionate caring and satisfaction rather than compassion fatigue. So ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have on the subject of compassion fatigue and burnout. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those at this time. You can go ahead.